Constantinople, 532 AD. Flames devour the greatest city on earth. 100,000 rioters surge through burning streets, chanting one word, death. Inside the imperial palace, the emperor, the most powerful man alive, turns to his generals with shaking hands and whispers the unthinkable. We run. Tonight. Gold clinks into chests. Escape ships wait in the harbor. The Roman Empire, the last echo of Caesar's glory, has minutes left to exist. Then a voice cuts through the chaos. Cold, steady, fearless. A woman's voice. Not a princess born into purple silk. Not a general's daughter trained for war. No, this woman clawed her way up from the absolute bottom of society, from stages where actresses were considered one step above prostitutes. She looks at the emperor, her husband, and speaks words that will save Europe itself. But here's what they never tell you. How does someone like her end up here? How does a girl from the gutters become the person standing between civilization and collapse? This is her story, the story of Theodora. Let's rewind 25 years. Forget the palace. Forget the crown. We're in the filthy back streets of Constantinople, the greatest city in the world if you happen to be rich. If you're poor, it's hell. The year is around 500 AD. The Byzantine Empire still calls itself Rome, even though the western half collapsed decades ago. Constantinople is the jewel that remains, a city of 500,000 people crammed onto a peninsula, surrounded by massive walls that have never been breached. The Hippodrome dominates the city center. It's not just a stadium, it's the beating heart of Byzantine culture. Picture a structure that holds 100,000 screaming fans, chariot races every week, wild animal fights, public executions, political demonstrations. This is where the empire's pulse is felt, where emperors gauge public opinion, where riots start. And somewhere in the bowels of this massive structure, in the dank animal pens that smell of blood and fur and death, works a man named Cassius. He's a bearkeeper. Not a trainer, a keeper. He feeds the bears, cleans their cages, makes sure they're aggressive enough to put on a good show before they're killed for public entertainment. It's dirty work, dangerous work, the kind of job that marks you as permanently lower class. Cassius has 3 daughters, Comito, Theodora, and Anastasia. Then he dies. Maybe it's a disease. Maybe a bear finally got him. The sources don't tell us. What they do tell us is that his death leaves 4 females with 0 income in a society that has very specific ideas about what women without men are worth. Theodora's mother makes a desperate move. She remarries quickly, finds another bearkeeper to take Cassius's position. But there's a problem. The Blues faction, which controls the Hippodrome games, already has someone else in mind for the job. They reject her new husband. So Theodora's mother does something shocking. She dresses her 3 daughters in supplicants' robes, the kind beggars wear, and parades them into the Hippodrome during a packed event. Thousands of people watching. She's making a public appeal. Please have mercy on these orphans. Give my husband the job. The Blues ignore them, laugh them off, reject them publicly. But the Greens, the rival faction, see an opportunity. They accept the new husband, give him a position. Not because they care about the family, but because humiliating the Blues is always worthwhile. Theodora is maybe 5 years old when this happens, old enough to understand shame, old enough to remember which faction showed her family mercy and which one threw them away like garbage. Old enough to remember what it feels like to be powerless. Her mother, grateful for any income, makes another decision. She puts her daughters on stage, the Byzantine stage, and you need to understand what that means. Byzantine theater in the 6th century isn't Broadway. It's not respectable entertainment. Actresses, called mimi, are considered public property. Legally, they're one small step above prostitutes. Actually, scratch that, many of them are prostitutes who occasionally perform. The church calls them daughters of the devil. Respectable women won't even make eye contact with them. A senator caught with an actress can lose his position. The social stigma is absolute and permanent. Young Theodora starts as a dresser for her older sister Comito, who performs in mimes, short theatrical pieces that are part comedy, part striptease, part social satire. She carries her sister's stool on stage, gets laughs from the audience because she's so small and serious. Then she grows up and she becomes a performer herself. The historical sources on this period are complicated. Our main source is Procopius, a Byzantine historian who wrote two very different accounts of Theodora's life. In his official history, written during her lifetime, he praises her as a capable empress. In his secret history, written after her death and hidden for centuries, he absolutely destroys her reputation. According to Procopius's secret account, Theodora performed in shows that were explicitly sexual. He describes theatrical pieces where she played Leda seduced by Zeus in swan form, where she stripped on stage, where she engaged in acts that pushed every social boundary. How much of this is true? How much is character assassination by a man who hated powerful women? We'll never know for certain. What we do know is this. Whether she did everything Procopius claimed, or half of it, or none of it, Byzantine society believes she did, and that belief marked her permanently. By her mid-teens, Theodora is trapped. She's an actress, which means she'll never be respectable. She can never marry a citizen. She can never own property. Her children, if she has any, will be illegitimate, carrying her shame forever. This is her life. This is her ceiling. This is as good as it gets. And then she meets a man named Hysebulus. He's been appointed governor of Pentapolis, a region in North Africa in what's now Libya. He's headed to his new posting, and he wants companionship. Theodora sees an opportunity. A governor's mistress has status, security, protection. It's not marriage, but it's better than the hippodrome. She's maybe 16, 17 years old when she leaves Constantinople with him. She thinks she's escaping. She thinks this is her chance at something better. She's wrong. Hysebulus keeps her for about 4 years. Then for reasons the sources don't explain. Maybe he's bored. Maybe she's too independent. Maybe he found someone else. He throws her out. Just abandons her in North Africa with nothing. No money, no protection, no way home. And here's what you need to understand about being a Byzantine woman alone in 6th century North Africa. You're not going to make it. There's no social safety net, no police force that cares if you're robbed or killed, no jobs for women except the ones that destroy you. Most women in Theodora's position would die within months. Starvation, disease, violence. The streets don't forgive. But Theodora doesn't die. Somehow, she survives. And during those lost years in Africa, something fundamental changes inside her. The sources go quiet here. For 2, maybe 3 years, we lose track of Theodora completely. It's like she vanishes from history. Later accounts, written by people sympathetic to her, claim she had a religious awakening in Africa, that she met holy men and women who showed her a different path, that she studied Christian theology and found purpose beyond survival. Skeptics say she was just calculating her next move, that she recognized she needed to completely remake her image if she wanted any chance at a better life. Probably both are true. What we know for certain is this. When Theodora reappears in Constantinople around 522 AD, she's unrecognizable. Gone is the wild actress from the hippodrome. In her place is a quiet, modest woman living in a small house near the imperial palace. She spins wool for income, respectable work for women. She attends church regularly. She dresses conservatively. She speaks carefully, with intelligence and precision. People who knew her before are confused. Is this the same person? What happened in Africa? Theodora doesn't explain. She just lives her new life with absolute discipline. No scandals, no mistakes, no slipping back into old patterns. She's betting everything on this transformation because she knows that in Constantinople, reputation is everything. And she spent years building the worst reputation imaginable. Now she's trying to build a new one, from scratch, alone. And then one day someone notices her. Not just anyone, Justinian. He's around 40 years old at this point, the nephew and heir apparent to Emperor Justin. He's brilliant, obsessed with Roman law, theology, administration. He works constantly, sleeps little, micromanages everything. He's being groomed to become the most powerful man in the world. And he cannot stop thinking about this former actress who now spins wool near the palace. How do they meet? The sources don't say. Maybe he saw her at church. Maybe she was introduced by someone at court. Maybe it was pure chance. What matters is what happens next. Justinian falls in love. Not lust, not fascination. Love. The kind that makes powerful men do stupid things. He wants to marry her, make her his wife, his partner, his equal. This is insane, legally impossible, socially catastrophic. There's a law written into Byzantine legal code that specifically forbids senators from marrying actresses. It's designed to maintain social hierarchies, to keep power in the hands of respectable families, to prevent exactly this scenario. Justinian doesn't care. He starts bringing Theodora to court functions, introduces her to senators who look at her like she's a disease, tests their relationship against the full weight of Byzantine society's contempt. And Theodora? She stands beside him, silent, composed, enduring every whisper, every insult, every turn back with the same patience she learned in Africa. She knows what they're thinking. Who does this whore think she is? She doesn't defend herself, doesn't argue, just exists with such quiet dignity that it makes her enemies even angrier. But there's one person who can stop this marriage permanently. Empress Euphemia, Justin's wife, the current empress. A woman who came from humble origins herself. She was a barbarian slave before marrying Justin when he was just a soldier. You'd think she'd sympathize with Theodora, right? One low-born woman who made it should help another? Wrong. Euphemia despises Theodora. Maybe she's protecting imperial dignity. Maybe she's jealous that Theodora caught Justinian's eye. Maybe she genuinely believes an actress would corrupt the empire. Whatever her reasons, Euphemia uses every ounce of power she possesses to block this marriage. As long as she lives, Theodora remains a scandal, a mistress, a woman respectable society pretends doesn't exist. So they wait. Months turn into years. Justinian and Theodora's relationship continues, but they can't marry, can't make it official. Theodora lives in this horrible limbo, too important to dismiss, too scandalous to acknowledge. Then in 523 AD, Euphemia dies. The sources don't tell us how Theodora feels about this, but we can guess. Within months of Euphemia's death, Justinian makes his move. He goes to his uncle, Emperor Justin, and says, "Change the law." The Senate protests. The church objects. The nobility is horrified. Nobody wants this actress wearing imperial purple. Justin changes the law anyway. Not for Theodora, for his beloved nephew. The decree is carefully worded. It allows repentant actresses who've abandoned their former lives to marry into the Senate. One woman, one law, written specifically for her. In 525 AD, Theodora marries Justinian. The ceremony is lavish, public, official. Theodora stands in the Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in Christendom, and becomes a senator's wife, an imperial princess, one step from the throne. The nobles attend because they must, but their faces say everything: disgust, rage, humiliation. 2 years later, Emperor Justin dies. Justinian becomes emperor. And Theodora, the bearkeeper's daughter, the actress from the gutters, the woman abandoned in Africa, the scandal that wouldn't go away, becomes Empress of the Byzantine Empire. You'd think this is where the story ends, the ultimate rags to riches tale. Poor girl makes good. Roll credits. But Coronation Day isn't the end. It's barely the beginning. Theodora doesn't become a decorative empress. She doesn't smile and wave and stay out of politics like Byzantine empresses are supposed to. She becomes something the Byzantine world has never seen, a co-ruler. Justinian doesn't just love her, he trusts her judgment completely. He consults her on everything: military appointments, religious policy, legal reforms, foreign diplomacy. She sits in on council meetings, makes decisions, gives orders. Their official coins show them side by side, crowned equally. Imperial documents name them together as joint sovereigns. Justinian and Theodora, rulers of the Romans. This isn't ceremonial. This is real, functioning, shared power. The senators and nobles who already hated her are now forced to bow, to seek her favor, to beg for her approval on appointments and policies. And Theodora, who remembers every insult, every turn back, every whispered comment from the years she spent being humiliated at court, wields her power with surgical precision. She transforms the laws protecting women, makes it illegal to force women into prostitution, a revolutionary concept in 6th century Rome, creates homes and convents for former sex workers, giving them paths to respectable lives, outlaws the trafficking of young girls into theatrical companies, gives women rights in divorce proceedings. A senator who insulted her years ago at a court function, his property mysteriously seized, his family exiled to distant provinces, his career destroyed. A general who questioned her authority in a council meeting, dismissed from service, his reputation ruined by carefully placed rumors. A bishop who preached against her from his pulpit, suddenly investigated for corruption, removed from his position, replaced with someone more cooperative. She doesn't do this publicly, doesn't make dramatic scenes. She's far too intelligent for that. The orders come quietly, the consequences arrive slowly. By the time you realize you've offended Theodora, it's already too late. People start to fear her more than they fear Justinian. The emperor is brilliant but predictable. You know what he cares about, what he'll reward, what he'll punish. Theodora is different. She's calculating in ways that make powerful men nervous. She also gets deeply involved in religious controversies. The Byzantine Church is splitting over obscure theological questions about Christ's nature. Justinian supports the Orthodox position. Theodora quietly protects Monophysite Christians, a minority sect facing persecution. Why? Maybe she genuinely believes in their theology. Maybe she's building political alliances. Maybe she just likes having her own power base separate from her husband's. Whatever her reasons, she harbors Monophysite monks and priests in the palace, protects them from persecution, influences church appointments to favor her faction. This is dangerous. Religious disputes in Byzantium can trigger riots, revolts, civil wars. But Theodora doesn't back down. She plays religious politics like a chess master, always 3 moves ahead. For 5 years this works. Justinian and Theodora rule together, expanding the empire, reforming laws, building churches and aqueducts and fortifications. They're not universally loved, far from it, but they're stable, effective, powerful. Constantinople prospers, the empire holds together, and then in January 532 AD, everything starts to burn. To understand what happens next, you need to understand the blues and greens. They started as chariot racing factions. Think ancient sports teams, blue team versus green team. Every week they'd race in the hippodrome while 100,000 fans screamed themselves hoarse. But over time, they evolved into something much more dangerous. They became political factions, social movements, paramilitary organizations with thousands of members each. They had their own neighborhoods, their own gang colors, their own enforcers who roamed the streets looking for fights. Blues and greens rioted regularly. They burned each other's shops, murdered rival faction members, turned chariot races into battlegrounds. Emperors learned to carefully balance support between factions, favor one too much and the other revolts. Justinian traditionally supported the blues. His uncle Justin before him was a blue supporter. The greens hated the imperial family for this favoritism. For years, this tension simmered. Blues and greens fought each other constantly, but that was normal, expected, manageable. Then something unprecedented happened. They united against Justinian. It starts with arrests. Some blues and greens caused trouble at a race, probably fighting, maybe killing someone. Justinian orders them arrested. 7 men are sentenced to execution by hanging. The execution takes place on January 10th, 532 AD. But something goes wrong. 2 of the condemned men, one blue, one green, survive the hanging. The ropes break, or they're not hanged long enough or something. they're still alive. By Byzantine law and custom, this is considered divine intervention. When God saves you from execution, you're supposed to be pardoned. The two survivors flee to a church and claim sanctuary. Monks shelter them. The crowds gather, demanding their release. Justinian refuses, orders them rearrested and executed properly. The blues and greens, ancient enemies, suddenly share a common cause. The emperor is overstepping. He's ignoring God's will. He's being tyrannical. On January 13th, during the next scheduled chariot races, something extraordinary happens. Instead of competing, instead of fighting each other, blues and greens start chanting together, "Nika, Nika, Nika! Victory, victory, victory!" It's not a celebration, it's a battle cry. They're declaring victory over the emperor. Within hours, they're in the streets, not protesting, revolting. They attack the city prefect's house, burn it to the ground, move on to the Senate building, torch it, target tax officials, government buildings, anyone associated with Justinian's administration. The fires spread block by block. Constantinople is built largely of wood. When one building catches, the whole street goes, then the whole district. Justinian sends troops. The rioters fight them off. Some soldiers even join the revolt. He offers negotiations. The rioters respond by proclaiming a new emperor, a senator named Hypatius, who probably doesn't even want the job but gets swept up in the chaos. The Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in Christendom, the spiritual heart of the empire, catches fire. It burns to the ground. 1,000 years of history turn to ash in one night. For 5 days, Constantinople burns. The death toll climbs into the thousands. Entire neighborhoods are destroyed. The smell of smoke and death hangs over the city. Justinian tries everything, offers concessions, promises reforms, dismisses unpopular ministers. Nothing works. By January 18th, the palace is surrounded. Rioters fill the hippodrome, the same hippodrome where Theodora's father kept bears, where she performed as a child. They're crowning Hypatius as emperor, celebrating their victory. Inside the palace, Justinian is finished. Not just politically, psychologically. He's barricaded in with his advisors, and every single one of them is saying the same thing: run. The council chamber is thick with fear. You can smell it. Sweat and smoke drifting in from outside, the distant roar of crowds calling for blood. Belisarius stands by the window. He's Justinian's greatest general, the man who's won every battle he's ever fought. Right now he's looking at the harbor, at the imperial ships waiting there, calculating escape routes. "Your Majesty," he says quietly, "we have maybe 3 hours before they storm the palace. We have ships. We have gold. We can evacuate to Thessalonica, rebuild our forces, return when the city calms." The treasurer nods. "I've packed the imperial treasury, everything portable. We can re-establish the court elsewhere." Another advisor: "Once we're safe, we can negotiate, offer concessions, maybe even return peacefully." One by one, the most powerful men in the empire make their case. Flee now or die within hours. Justinian looks around the room. These are men who've served him for years. Loyal men, competent men. And they're all terrified. He feels it too. That cold certainty. The sense that history has turned against him. That the mob outside will drag him into the street and tear him apart. He thinks about his uncle Justin, who rose from peasant farmer to emperor through luck and military service. About the dynasty they built together. About the dream of restoring Rome's glory. All of it ending because he lost control of a stadium crowd. "Prepare the ships," he says finally. His voice is barely a whisper. The room exhales. It's decided. They're abandoning Constantinople. The Byzantine Empire, which has stood for over 1,000 years, will collapse because one emperor lost his nerve. Men start moving, gathering documents, making lists of who goes on which ship, planning the evacuation. And then Theodora speaks. She's been sitting in the corner this entire meeting, silent, watching these powerful men crumble. Now she stands, and something in her movement makes everyone freeze. "If flight were the only means of safety," she says, her voice cutting through the panic like a blade, "still I would not agree with you." The room goes absolutely silent. Consider this, she continues. Once a man has been born into this world, it is inevitable that he should die. But for one who has reigned, it is intolerable to become a fugitive. She's not pleading, not begging. She's stating facts with the certainty of someone who survived things these men can't imagine. May I never be without this purple robe. She touches the imperial silk, the symbol of power she fought for decades to wear. May I never live to see the day when those who meet me do not call me Empress. She looks directly at Justinian, not at the advisors, not at the generals, at her husband, the man who changed laws to marry her. If you wish to save yourself, my lord, there is no difficulty. We are rich. There are the ships. There is the sea. Her voice is perfectly calm. But consider whether, when you have been saved, you will not regret every day that you did not choose death over safety. The words hang in the air like a judgment. As for me, Theodora says, I agree with the old saying, royalty is a fine burial shroud. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. She's just told the most powerful men in the empire that she'd rather die an empress than live as a coward. That if they run, they'll spend every remaining day of their pathetic lives wishing they died with dignity instead. It's not inspirational, it's not gentle, it's brutal and cutting and absolutely devastating. Every man in that room knows they've just been called cowards. By a woman, by a former actress, by someone they used to mock at court. Belisarius straightens slightly. He's a soldier. He understands what Theodora is saying in a way the politicians don't. She's not talking about honor in the abstract. She's talking about practical reality. Run now and you're finished. Die here and you're legends. Justinian stares at his wife. This woman who came from nothing, who survived abandonment, poverty, contempt, who stood beside him when respectable society mocked them both, who never, not once in her entire life, ran from a fight. He sees himself through her eyes, a coward preparing to flee, a man about to throw away everything because he's scared. The shame is overwhelming. Cancel the evacuation, Justinian says quietly. Then louder, cancel it. We stay. We fight. With Theodora's words still ringing in his ears, Justinian makes a series of rapid decisions. First, no more negotiations. No more concessions. The rioters crowned a rival emperor. This is now a war for survival, and wars end when one side is destroyed. Second, Belisarius takes command, not the palace guard, not the city prefect, Belisarius, the best military commander in the empire. Third, they're going to end this at the Hippodrome, where it started, where the rioters are celebrating their victory, where Theodora's entire story began decades ago. Belisarius moves fast. He takes his personal guard, maybe 300 veteran soldiers, and another general named Mundus brings additional troops. They're outnumbered 50-1, but they have three advantages. They're professional soldiers, they're fighting in a confined space, and the rioters think they've already won. The Hippodrome is packed, tens of thousands of blues and greens celebrating together, something that's never happened before. They've crowned Hypatius emperor. They're dividing up government positions, planning the new regime. They think Justinian has fled, that Constantinople is theirs. Then Belisarius' soldiers seal the exits. The celebration falters. People near the doors start to realize something's wrong. The soldiers aren't standing guard. They're blocking escape routes. Then the killing starts. Belisarius' troops move through the Hippodrome systematically. They don't try to arrest anyone, don't demand surrender. They just kill. Professional soldiers with swords facing civilians with clubs and stones. The rioters try to fight back. They have numbers, but they're trapped in a stadium with limited exits, pressed against each other, unable to maneuver. It's not a battle, it's a slaughter. The ancient sources, written decades later, possibly exaggerated, claim 30,000 people died in the Hippodrome that day. 30,000. Even if the real number is half that, it's still one of the worst massacres in Byzantine history. The Hippodrome floor, where chariot wheels usually race, runs red. Bodies pile up against the sealed exits. The screaming can be heard across the city. It takes hours. When it's finally over, Belisarius's men wade through corpses to arrest Hypatius, the reluctant emperor, and drag him to Justinian. Hypatius begs for mercy, claims he never wanted to be emperor, that the mob forced him. Justinian has him executed the next day, along with his brother and anyone else who might remotely threaten the throne. The Nika riots end. Justinian's authority is restored through terror. Constantinople is traumatized, scarred, but stable. But here's what you need to understand. Without Theodora's speech, none of this happens. Without her, Justinian flees. The blues and greens install Hypatius as emperor. But Hypatius is weak, chosen by a mob, supported by no one. The Byzantine Empire fragments into civil war. Different factions back different emperors. The military splits. Provinces rebel. Persia, watching from the east, sees the chaos and invades. Barbarian tribes in Europe push against weakened borders. The empire that has held back invasions for centuries suddenly can't defend itself. Within a generation, maybe less, Byzantium collapses completely, and with it goes the last connection to classical Rome, the preserver of ancient knowledge, the shield protecting Europe from Eastern invasions. The entire trajectory of Western civilization changes. Maybe Islam expands into Europe centuries earlier. Maybe feudalism never develops the same way. Maybe the Renaissance never happens because the classical texts Byzantine scholars preserved are lost forever. One woman, one speech, one moment of refusal. Theodora didn't just save Justinian's throne that day, she saved Europe's future. Before we see what happens next, if you're hooked on this story, and I know you are because you've made it this far, hit that subscribe button right now. This is episode 1 of Forgotten Heroes, and we're just getting started. Next episode features a story even more unbelievable. An African slave who became a samurai in feudal Japan, fought in battles that shaped Japanese history, then vanished from records entirely. Trust me, Yasuke's story will blow your mind. Like this video, drop a comment telling me what you think of Theodora so far, and share this with someone who loves history. Now back to Constantinople, where an empire tries to rebuild. After the Nika riots, Theodora rules for another 16 years. But she's different now. The woman who once had to prove herself is gone. In her place is someone who's passed the ultimate test. She saved the empire when the emperor couldn't. Everyone knows it. The senators who despised her, the nobles who mocked her, the generals who doubted her. They all know that when it mattered most, the former actress had more courage than any of them. Her power becomes absolute. She continues reforming laws, more protections for women, more rights in marriage and divorce, harsher penalties for rape and abuse. She builds networks of informants throughout the capital, knowing everything that happens in every noble household. She continues protecting monophysite Christians, creating a religious movement that will outlast the empire itself. She also becomes more ruthless. A prominent general named John the Cappadocian, one of Justinian's closest advisors, makes the mistake of opposing her publicly. Theodora destroys him, has him framed for conspiracy, stripped of his position, exiled to Egypt where he ends up working as a priest in a small church. From the heights of power to absolute obscurity, all because he challenged the empress. The message is clear. Don't cross Theodora, but she's not just feared. She's also respected, sometimes even loved. The women she saves from prostitution remember her. The reforms she enacts help thousands of ordinary people. The monophysite communities she protects consider her a saint. In 548 AD, she falls ill. Cancer, most historians think, though the sources aren't clear. She's maybe 48 years old. She dies on June 28, 548 AD. Justinian is devastated, completely broken. He rules for another 17 years, but never remarries, never finds another partner, never stops mourning the woman who saved him. He finishes the projects she started, maintains the laws she created, builds churches in her memory. The new Hagia Sophia, rebuilt after the riots, includes mosaics of Theodora crowned in imperial purple, standing equal to Justinian, staring out across the centuries. But here's the final twist, the one they never teach in school. After Theodora's death, a historian named Procopius, the same one who praised her in his official histories, wrote a secret book. He called it Anecdota, the Secret History. In it, he absolutely savaged Theodora's reputation. He claimed she was a demon, a prostitute who corrupted Justinian, a manipulator who used sexual favors to gain power. He described her youth in the most explicit, degrading terms possible, made her sound like a monster in human form. For centuries, this secret history was hidden. When it finally surfaced in the 1600s, it became the standard interpretation of Theodora's life. The whore empress, the scandal, the woman who seduced her way to power. That's how history remembered her for 400 years. It's only in recent decades that historians started questioning Procopius's account, started noticing things that don't add up. First, Procopius wrote two completely contradictory accounts of the same person. In his official history, Theodora is wise and capable. In his secret history, she's a demonic prostitute. Which one is true? Second, the secret history wasn't just hidden during Theodora's lifetime. It was hidden during Justinian's too, and for years after. Procopius never published it, never showed it to anyone. He wrote it in secret and hid it away, probably because publishing it would have gotten him executed. That tells you something. If his claims were based on common knowledge, on things everyone knew, why hide the book? Why risk everything to write accusations you can never publish? Third, every specific, degrading claim about Theodora's youth comes from Procopius's secret history. There are no other sources, no contemporary accounts, no other historians mentioning these scandalous performances. Just one man writing in secret, decades after the events he describes. Fourth, Procopius had reasons to hate Theodora. He was close to Belisarius, the general who saved the empire during the Nika riots. Later, Theodora accused Belisarius's wife of conspiracy and had her imprisoned. Procopius blamed Theodora for his patron's humiliation. He also hated that a woman held real power. His secret history drips with misogyny. He describes not just Theodora, but nearly every powerful woman in the empire as corrupt, sexual, manipulative. It's not objective history. It's a bitter man's revenge fantasy. So what's the truth about Theodora? We'll never know for certain. Maybe she did perform in scandalous theatrical pieces. Byzantine theater was rough, and survival demanded doing whatever paid. Maybe some of Procopius's claims have kernels of truth buried under layers of exaggeration and hatred. But here's what we know without question. She rose from the absolute bottom of Byzantine society to become co-ruler of the most powerful empire on earth. She saved that empire from collapse when every man around her was ready to flee. She reformed laws to protect the most vulnerable women in society. She ruled for 20 years with intelligence and strength, and powerful men tried to erase her for it. They couldn't deny she was empress. Too many witnesses, too many official records, too many coins with her face. So instead, they destroyed her character, made her into a cautionary tale about women who reach too high, want too much, refuse to stay in their place. For 1,400 years, it worked. Theodora became the whore empress in popular imagination. The scandal, the woman who proved that actresses and prostitutes were corrupting influences who should never have power. Only now, finally, are historians looking past the propaganda and seeing the real woman underneath. So who was Theodora really? Strip away Procopius's hatred, strip away the Byzantine propaganda, both for and against her. What's left? A survivor. That's the core of who she was. Someone who learned early that the world is brutal to women without power, and that survival means being smarter, tougher, and more calculating than everyone trying to destroy you. She understood power in ways Justinian never could. He was born into the imperial family, groomed for leadership, educated by the best teachers in the empire. Power was his birthright. Theodora clawed her way up from nothing. She knew what it meant to be powerless, to be at the mercy of men who could use you and discard you, to have no legal rights, no social standing, no protection. No. That knowledge made her dangerous. It also made her the perfect partner for an emperor trying to reform an empire. Think about her legal reforms. They weren't abstract philosophical exercises. They came from lived experience. She knew what happened to women forced into prostitution because she'd lived in that world. She knew how traffickers operated, how they exploited desperate families, how the system enabled abuse, so she changed the system, made it illegal, created alternatives, saved lives. But she was also ruthless. She destroyed enemies without hesitation, used informants and spies to maintain control, played religious factions against each other, accumulated power and refused to give it up. Was she a hero or a villain? Probably both. History's most interesting figures usually are. She was a woman who survived impossible circumstances and refused to be grateful for scraps, who demanded equality and took it when it wasn't offered, who saved an empire and then ruled it without apology. She was also someone who crushed opponents, held grudges, used power in ways that hurt people, who probably made decisions we'd consider unjust today, who lived in a brutal world and responded with equal brutality. The question isn't whether she was perfect. She wasn't. No one is. The question is, why did history work so hard to destroy her reputation? Why did Procopius spend years writing a secret book tearing her down? Why did later historians accept his most extreme claims without question? Why does her story, when it's told at all, still focus more on her youth as an actress than her decades as empress? Because she was a woman who refused to stay in her place, who took power that wasn't supposed to be hers, who proved that birth and gender don't determine capability. And for 1400 years, that was too dangerous to acknowledge. Here's something most people don't know. Theodora's influence didn't end with her death. The Monophysite Christians she protected, they survived centuries of persecution and eventually became major churches that still exist today. The Coptic Orthodox Church, the Syrian Orthodox Church, the Armenian Apostolic Church. Millions of Christians across the Middle East and North Africa trace their religious heritage to communities Theodora shielded. The legal reforms she championed? They influenced Byzantine law for centuries. When Justinian compiled his famous legal code, the Corpus Juris Civilis, that became the foundation for European law, many protections for women came directly from Theodora's advocacy. The model of a powerful empress ruling alongside her husband, it set a precedent. Later Byzantine empresses like Irene and Theodora, yes, another one, wielded real political power, partly because Theodora had proven it was possible. Even her enemies' hatred of her changed history. Procopius's secret history became a template for attacking powerful women. For the next 1,000 years, any woman who accumulated political power faced similar accusations. She's sexually promiscuous, she's manipulative, she's corrupting the men around her. The slanders against Theodora echo in attacks on Catherine de' Medici, Anne Boleyn, Catherine the Great, and countless others. The same playbook used again and again because it worked on Theodora. But here's the irony. By trying to erase Theodora, Procopius ensured we'd remember her. If he'd written a moderate criticism, she was a capable empress, but perhaps too ambitious. History would have filed her away as a minor figure. But by making her into a monster, by claiming she was uniquely scandalous and powerful, he made her unforgettable. People have been arguing about Theodora for 14 centuries, defending her, attacking her, trying to figure out who she really was beneath the legends. And that's a kind of immortality Procopius never intended to give her. So that's Theodora, the woman who saved Europe, the forgotten hero whose name should be shouted from rooftops but instead gets whispered in footnotes. She was born in the gutters of Constantinople, survived abandonment in Africa, transformed herself completely, married an emperor, saved an empire from collapse with a single speech, ruled for 2 decades with intelligence and iron will, and died knowing she'd change the world. Then history tried to bury her under 1,400 years of slander. But she survived that too, because survivors always do. If this story moved you, if it made you angry that you never learned this in school, hit that like button right now. Subscribe for episode 2, where we're traveling to feudal Japan to meet Yasuke, an African slave who became a samurai, fought in battles that shaped Japanese history, and then vanished from the records entirely. Why was he erased? Who was he really? What happened to him after Nobunaga's death? And why does his story sound like fiction but turn out to be absolutely, verifiably real? Find out in the next episode of Forgotten Heroes. Drop a comment. Do you think Theodora was a hero or a ruthless operator? Was she justified in her actions? Would you have fled if you were Justinian? Or would Theodora's speech have convinced you to stay? Let's debate in the comments. Share this video with everyone who thinks they know history, because they don't, not until they know her story. Remember, history isn't just written by the victors. It's written by the people powerful enough to control the narrative. And for too long, women like Theodora have been written out, torn down, or reduced to scandals. Not anymore. Not on this channel. This is Forgotten Heroes. We tell the stories they tried to erase. I'm out. See you in episode 2.